Welcome to Critical Issues Commentary, the radio ministry of Twin City Fellowship, a non-denominational Christian church located at 24th and Nicollet Avenue South in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or on the web, twincityfellowship.com. This is Dick Kuffel, your host for the next half hour. We're speaking today with Bob Dewaay, pastor of Twin City Fellowship and author of Critical Issues Commentary. Our topic today is the pitfalls of false prophets. Robert's an interesting title, but what happened in the world, or what have you seen in the world situation that made you select that as a topic for writing?
What happened was that after the events of September 11th, anytime there's a cataclysmic event in the world, there are people that believe themselves to be prophets. Of course, it's their job to say that they predicted this or tell us what it means or make other predictions about things that are going to happen, because people are worried about what's going to happen in the future. Well,
in your article, you quoted a man by the name of Bob Jones, and I'd like to point out that's not the one of Bob Jones University. This is a prophet quote.
Yeah, in certain circles, he's considered a very accurate prophet.
And he made some comments about Los Angeles.
I have a tape that was given by him on December 31st, 1997, and in this tape, he predicts that people should get out of Los Angeles because there's going to be a horrible earthquake, and there are people with suitcase nuclear bombs in California, and they're going to evidently blow up California. And so he made this prediction. He predicted the Hoover Dam would break, the West Coast would fall in the ocean, the Mississippi River would become 10 miles wide because of an earthquake, that Chicago would be destroyed. It's amazing a number of horrific events that he prophesied about back in 1997.
Well, a simple question, probably a little early for the program, but should they leave?
Well, they obviously didn't all leave. There's a lot of people still living in Los Angeles, and this is now several years down the line.
No, we're going to return to that a little bit later on because there's some real implications in that whole thing. Discussion today, where are we headed?
Well, what I'd like to do is just discuss the whole issue of predictive prophecies and what are the issues that surround these things. Talk about whether God is raising up prophets to tell us what's going to happen in the future, and also what happens if they give false prophecies.
Okay. Well, we've got about three major areas we're going to explore, and the first one is going to be which prophets are we to heed and how do we know? Who do you believe?
Well, that's a major problem. Now, some of our listeners maybe aren't in circles where these type of people are given credibility, but many maybe are. There's a lot of these books being written. There's a movement called Revival Fire that promotes prophets, and there are dozens of people claiming to be prophets and apostles. And so the question is, which ones are really from God? Are they all from God? Are none of them from God? They can't all be from God because they aren't saying the same things.
Okay, so we don't get a uniform message.
Let me give you an example. I have referenced this book by Bill Hammond, who claims to be a prophet and an apostle, and he is predicting a glorious future in the next 30, 40 years. He believes that the church is going to be so powerful and so triumphant that the nations are going to submit to Christ, and that the world is going to be radically changed for the better, and that all of these wonderful things are going to happen, and then Christ will return after we've taken this dominion over the planet through this movement of apostles and prophets. So he's a prophet who says things are going to be great.
There are others that say something else?
Well, then there are the doom and gloom prophets who are saying apostasy will be worse, judgment's coming on the world, America is going to be destroyed, and so forth and so on. So we have doom and gloom scenario, and we have this rosy scenario. And let's say you are a person in this movement, and you're listening to these various prophets who have totally conflicting ideas about what's going to happen in the future. You have to make a decision.
Okay, so our next part of this discussion for today is going to be what criteria are we going to use. I'm going to propose three of them, and then we'll take them apart individually. The first would be signs and wonders, and the second would be claims for healings and information, etc. And third one would be the degree of accuracy. So let's talk about the first one, signs and wonders. Is that a good way to select who's a good prophet?
Well, they say that it is, and they claim that God is going to do remarkable signs that prove that any given individual is a prophet because he does signs. I don't see anybody doing any conclusive signs that prove that they're prophets. And also, there's another problem that we need to talk about, which is, according to Deuteronomy, false prophets also do signs.
You quoted Matthew 24 and I think 2 Thessalonians in your paper also. What did they say?
It said that at the end time, false prophets will arise and do signs and wonders to mislead, if possible, the elect.
False prophets.
Yeah, false prophets are going to, the Bible predicts that false prophets will arise and do signs, and that the signs will be misleading. It doesn't say the signs will not happen. The intent of a sign is to validate the message of the prophet. So a false prophet does a sign that actually comes to pass, but has a message that's leading us astray. Antichrist will do signs and wonders, according to 2 Thessalonians 2. So here is something that I think people should take heed about, and that is that we have these prophets telling us that they're doing signs and wonders, therefore they're truly from God, and we should listen to them. However, the Bible predicts that false prophets are going to do signs and wonders, so why should we believe these people aren't false prophets?
Okay, the second category had to do with claims for healings.
Well, the healings and the signs also are kind of ambiguous in my mind. I watched some of these guys on TV, and the sign that they do mostly is this slaying under the power. Have you heard of that?
I've seen it.
If you haven't seen it, if you're one of our listeners, the idea is they get people up on the stage and they either touch them on the forehead or wave their hands over them or blow on them or in some cases push on them. And the people fall over sort of like a tree that just was felled with an axe. Sometimes they have catchers so that the people catch them and lay them in piles on the stage. And this has been going on for 20, 30 years, and it's actually reported in revivals back to the turn of the previous century. That is typically a sign that they claim that shows that they're from God. Okay. I don't believe that that proves anything.
Okay. What about accuracy, the degree of accuracy?
Well, again, we have the words of other prophets claiming certain things. For instance, in this tape that I have where this Bob Jones predicts Los Angeles is going to be destroyed, we have another prophet by the name of Rick Joyner, who a lot of people have heard of. And Rick Joyner is telling us that Bob Jones is one of the most accurate prophets out there. But how do we know? Most of us haven't been following every word that this guy said for the last 20 years and finding out what he said when and did it come to pass. We just have another prophet telling us we should believe this other guy because he's real accurate, not 100%, but somewhat accurate. I'm not sure that I can believe any of this.
Well, Scripture has a comment about who we're to fear. Now, that's an interesting word, but we're not to fear them if they're not accurate.
Yeah, that's in Deuteronomy 18:22. It says, God did not send them. Don't fear them. Don't listen to their words because God didn't send them. If they say something and it doesn't come to pass, don't fear them. Don't allow them to bring fear into your life. Don't allow them to dangle you over the pit, so to speak, with dire threats if you don't listen to them.
Well, you made a comment, and again, this is in the paper if folks wanted to read it and have a little bit of a deeper discussion here, but it had to do with the fear of catastrophe, being judged, missing out on some great move of God, coming under curses, all kinds of reasons people fear prophets.
Well, they lay these things out in that kind of a context to make people feel like if you don't listen to them, God's going to judge you. They do that in their books. They give anecdotes to prove their case. They claim that people are going to be struck dead if they don't listen to these people seriously. There's all kinds of claims being made that instill fear in people who would be their potential listeners and followers. And there are people who are caught in these groups that are very much in bondage. They don't dare disagree with these prophets for fear that they're going to be cursed by God.
Don't they actually use Scripture in their prophecies?
Yeah, they like to portray themselves as being Elijah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, and they tell stories about, for instance, Elijah was that Elisha? Who was it that was bald-headed? Come on, Bible quiz here.
I lose. I'm sorry.
One of those two prophets, remember, was going through the wilderness, and there was these kids mocking him.
Yes.
And then a bear came out and killed the kids.
That's it.
Well, there's stories like that in the Old Testament prophets, so they portray